In the earliest multicellular animals, there was no true blood. Life still had to move oxygen, food, and waste between cells. But the body had only one simple method: diffusion. Molecules drifted from where they were plentiful to where they were scarce. It worked, but only across tiny distances. That rule quietly set the first limit on animal life: stay small, stay thin, or starve inside. These early bodies relied on a basic internal fluid, more like seawater trapped inside than a specialized transport system. Cells near the outside received oxygen directly from the water around them. Cells deeper in waited for oxygen to seep inward step by step. The farther it had to travel, the slower it arrived. Movement and size came with a cost, grow thicker, and the center began to fall behind. So early animals stayed simple in design, flat, hollow, or riddled with spaces that kept every cell close to the outside. Some used a single internal cavity to spread nutrients, but it still depended on slow mixing and short distances. There was no fast delivery, no rapid cleanup, no emergency backup when demand spiked. The consequence was unavoidable. Without a dedicated transport fluid, speed stayed low and bodies stayed limited. Diffusion had worked only while bodies stayed thin and simple. But as some animals grew thicker, the inner cells started to fall behind. Food and oxygen reached the surface first, then ran out. Waste built up where it should not. Survival demanded a new trick, a way to move fluid on purpose. So the first true circulatory systems appeared, tubes that guided flow and a pump that pushed it. At first, it did not look like blood in the modern sense. It looked like an internal river, a circulating body fluid that carried dissolved nutrients, salts, signals, and some oxygen too. The key change was motion. A simple heart-like swelling, squeezing in rhythm, kept the fluid moving in a loop or through open spaces and back again. Distance stopped being a hard limit. With circulation, cells deep inside finally received steady deliveries, not occasional lucky diffusion. Muscles could work longer before starving. Growth could continue without turning the body into a flat sheet. And control improved. The pump could speed up, slow down, and shift flow toward active tissues. This system did not just feed a body. It set the stage for bigger animals, faster movement, and the next leap, fluid built to carry oxygen. Once circulation existed, a new problem appeared. The moving fluid carried oxygen only as loose molecules dissolved in it, and that supply ran out fast. Oxygen simply did not dissolve well. So even with a pump, tissues still faced shortages whenever activity rose. Then chemistry offered a workaround. Some animals began producing oxygen-binding pigments, small proteins that grabbed oxygen where it was plentiful and held it for later. These early hemoglobin-like molecules changed the rules. Instead of letting oxygen drift freely, the fluid now stored it, like cargo in a container. In oxygen-rich areas, the pigment loaded up. Deeper in the body, it let go. That loading and unloading happened again and again with every circuit. Suddenly, the same volume of circulating fluid delivered far more usable oxygen, and it did it more reliably. That shift turned circulation into something new. The fluid no longer acted mainly as a general soup for nutrients and waste. It became a dedicated oxygen transport medium, tuned for the hardest job in the body. With pigments doing the carrying, the pump mattered more, because every push moved real oxygen reserves, not just traces. Animals gained a larger safety margin, and sustained movement became less risky. Oxygen-carrying molecules already drifted in the fluid, but they had a limit. Mixed freely, they took up space and got in the way of everything else the body needed to move around. Evolution answered with a simple, forceful idea: put the pigment inside a dedicated cell. Red blood cells appeared as tiny packages built for one job. They carried hemoglobin where it mattered, in massive concentration. Once hemoglobin sat inside a cell, the blood changed character. The plasma stayed clearer for salts, nutrients and waste, while the red cells became moving tanks of oxygen. Cell membranes kept the pigment from leaking and clumping, and the body controlled how many carriers circulated at once. More carriers meant more oxygen per heartbeat. The jump was not small. It rewrote the ceiling on how active an animal could be. With that extra oxygen capacity, tissues that once starved now stayed fed during effort. Muscles worked longer before tiring. Nervous systems signaled faster bodies that could actually respond. Size became less of a gamble because distance inside the body stopped being such a barrier to breathing. Red blood cells turned oxygen from a scarce trickle into a dependable delivery. From there, bigger frames and harder movement became realistic options, not exceptions. Early vertebrates changed the rules by putting blood inside closed vessels. Before that, many animals pushed fluid into open spaces where it washed over organs and slowly drifted back. It worked, but it was hard to aim and hard to speed up. In a closed system, blood stayed in a set of tubes, so every beat moved it forward instead of letting it spread out. That simple change created pressure. A stronger, more muscular heart squeezed against a sealed circuit, and the blood responded like water in a hose. It surged, it reached farther, and it arrived on time. Now delivery became something the body controlled, not something it hoped for. More pressure meant faster flow, and faster flow meant oxygen and fuel reached busy tissues before they ran out. Closed vessels also allowed finer control. By tightening or relaxing sections of the tubing, early vertebrates redirected blood to where it mattered most: working muscles, a growing brain, or organs that needed steady supply. Open circulation could not easily do that. It flooded broadly and accepted waste. With pressure and control together, blood became a reliable delivery service. Bigger bodies and quicker movement followed as a consequence. For a long time, blood followed one simple loop. It left the heart, picked up oxygen, then fed the body. That worked, until bodies asked for more. As animals grew stronger and more active, the old route created a problem. Oxygen-poor blood mixed too easily with oxygen-rich blood. Delivery became uneven. The heart pumped, but the body still faced an oxygen bottleneck. A crucial change appeared. Circulation split into dedicated paths. One route ran to the gills or lungs to load oxygen. Another route ran out to the tissues to spend it. Blood no longer took a single muddled trip. It followed a plan. The heart began to push blood in more organized directions, limiting mixing and keeping oxygen levels higher where they mattered most. That separation raised performance immediately. Oxygen loading became more reliable because blood reached the gills or lungs with low oxygen and came back refreshed. Oxygen delivery improved because the body received blood that stayed richer for longer. Animals now supported faster muscles, longer activity, and bigger organs without starving them of air. A split circulation did not just move blood. It upgraded what blood could do. High-pressure blood solved one problem and created another. It delivered oxygen fast, but it also escaped fast. A small cut no longer meant a slow leak. It meant a sudden drop in pressure and a threat to life. So the system changed. Instead of relying on simple closing of a wound, blood began carrying its own emergency repair kit, ready to switch on within seconds. The first responders were tiny cell fragments later called platelets. They rushed to damaged vessel walls, stuck to the roughened surface, and clumped together. That pile-up formed a quick plug, like bodies blocking a doorway. It reduced the loss immediately, but it stayed fragile. A strong pulse could still tear it away. The plug needed reinforcement, and blood provided it in a second, deeper step. Proteins dissolved in blood activated in a strict sequence, one switching on the next, like falling dominoes. The cascade ended by making strands of fibrin, a tough mesh that wrapped the platelet plug and locked it in place. The seal held against pressure and gave the vessel time to heal. With that upgrade, animals kept the speed of pressurized circulation without paying for it at every wound. Warm-blooded life changed the deal. Instead of letting body temperature drift with the air or water, these animals kept it high and steady by burning fuel all the time. That constant heat meant constant demand. Muscles needed oxygen, not in bursts, but non-stop. The old delivery rate was no longer enough. To stay warm and still move fast, blood had to become a higher speed supply line. So the pump stepped up. Hearts pushed more blood each minute, raising cardiac output and keeping pressure useful without wasting time. That meant more oxygen reached the lungs, and more left the lungs on every pass. But volume alone did not solve it. The blood's toolkit refined its grip on oxygen. Hemoglobin became better tuned, loading oxygen strongly where it was plentiful, then letting go when tissues started to run hot and hungry. That controlled release mattered. Working tissues created signals that forced tight oxygen unloading, more carbon dioxide, more acid, more heat. Hemoglobin responded by loosening its hold right where it counted, so muscles did not have to wait. The result was endurance. Movement could stay fast longer, not just in a sprint. Warm-blooded metabolism kept demanding, and the upgraded blood system kept paying the bill, minute after minute. In humans, blood had to serve a new kind of body plan. A large brain demanded a steady, high-quality flow of oxygen every second, and muscles demanded the same during long walks, runs, and heavy work. So the system ran fast and under pressure, with tight control of heartbeat and vessel size. But that speed came with a price. A small failure in delivery stopped being minor. It became dangerous. The first risk came from shortage. When red blood cells or hemoglobin fell too low, the blood carried less oxygen and the whole machine slowed. Fatigue appeared, then weakness, then shortness of breath. That problem had many roots: blood loss, poor diet, infection, parasites, and inherited changes in hemoglobin itself. The same system that powered endurance also exposed a hard limit. Without enough carriers, the brain and muscles simply ran out. The second risk came from protection that turned against the body. Clotting saved lives after cuts, but inside vessels a clot could block flow, starving tissue in minutes. Slow blood, damaged vessel walls, and sticky chemistry made thrombosis more likely. Then the opposite danger waited at the edge of survival. In injury or childbirth, bleeding could outrun clotting, pressure dropped, and organs failed. Human blood had kept balance, modern life kept testing it. At the far beginning, life stayed small because oxygen and nutrients had to drift from cell to cell. Diffusion had set the speed limit, but in modern humans, blood had turned into a system that could be managed, not just endured. People had learned to identify blood by type, so one person's loss did not automatically mean death. A mismatch had triggered disaster. A correct match had bought time. Transfusion medicine had made blood partly replaceable. Fluids had restored volume. Stored red cells had carried oxygen when the body could not. And when the danger flipped, When clots formed too easily, medicine had pushed back in the other direction. Anticoagulants had slowed the clotting machinery that evolution built to stop bleeding. It had become a careful trade, prevent a stroke but not cause a hemorrhage. The biggest change had been measurement. A small tube of blood had revealed oxygen-carrying capacity, infection, organ stress, and clotting risk before symptoms became obvious. Diagnostics had turned an invisible internal river into numbers, trends, and warnings. Blood still had to flow, still had to clot, still had to deliver. But now it could be counted, buffered, replaced and adjusted, far beyond what diffusion-limited ancestors ever allowed.